What are we doing, though? I mean, if we're not going to live together, we just send everybody in spaceships all across the universe, then the climate change was definitely a racket. It's not going to be fucking relevant anymore. You are living in the most dangerous time in American history.
We won't take a single back step.
Former professional basketball player is now the Republican Party's choice.
Can you imagine Royce White, the U.S. Senate?
White won the endorsement on May 18th with 67% of the vote.
There's nothing that guarantees we win. But I guarantee you if we lose, we will die. Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio and powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGit.com. That's TireGit.com. You have to buy tires from somebody, you might as well buy them from us and help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast, Minneapolis, Minnesota. And today is Wednesday, March 12th, year of our Lord, 2025, episode 253, I believe.
54.
Episode 254. We want to thank you again for joining us this evening. We got a reaction episode for you. I hope if you get the chance, if you didn't already, please go back and watch the precinct strategy episode with Dan Schultz from last Friday. There's a reason we didn't have an episode Monday, because I think what Dan had to say about the precinct strategy is as important as anything else that we could talk about. So I hope that people had a chance to go back and catch up and review on the precinct strategy episode with Dan Schultz. If you didn't, again, when you get a chance, please do that. We're going to get right into the show. I don't have much to say today. We suffered a heartbreaking defeat last night at Hopkins High School to end our boys basketball season this year, section championship, to see who goes to the state tournament. And for the third year in a row, we lost to Wayzata after a very controversial game at the end of the season there to determine the number one seed, which we won, which we secured the number one seed, and we had home court advantage. And, you know, it was a really, really close game, really, really tight game, went down to the wire, lost by about 4 points, just didn't do enough to get the victory. And we had 3-4 seniors that, you know, their career is over and they didn't get a chance to win one. So that's always tough. Feel bad for those guys. But because of that, I'm not in much of a mood for monologuing this morning. So let's get right into the episode. We got some good clips here. I think this first one is a woman from the Ukraine being asked about how she feels about the war in Ukraine. And she had something very interesting to say. Let's roll the tape, Tanner. Oh, and by the way, we have Tanner in the studio with us again. The great Tanner is here producing.
Everybody.
Thanks for being here, Tanner. And here we go. Let's roll the clip.
Просто у нас же зараз війна йде, і нам потрібно всім з'єднатися, щоб не побідіти. Що ви думаєте?
Ничего я не думаю. Я вне политики.
Так, а хто агресор? А хто агресор тоді? Хто війну почав?
Украина.
Україна розпочала війну. А проти кого вона
В
розпочала війну?
2014 году против своих людей.
Україна сама на себе напала, так?
Да? Но а на Донбассе чьи люди? Ну чьи люди на Донбассе?
А якими танками тоді Україна напала сама на себе? Російськими, можливо?
Американские.
And for all of those who are just listening to the podcast and you can't see, they are interviewing what appears to be a more elder woman who is in Ukrainian attire. She's wearing a winter hat or skull cap that looks to have some very distinct Ukrainian colors. And they're asking her about who started the war, how she feels about the war, and she flat out says that Ukraine started the war. She said Ukraine started the war against its own people in 2014 in the Donbass. Oh, so hopefully, I mean, you guys can probably find this clip online. I don't think that it would be difficult to track down. But this woman was later, it appears in the video that she wasn't apprehended. I can't tell if she was apprehended, but she was definitely confronted or questioned by what appears to be Ukrainian law enforcement or officials, which shouldn't shock us. I mean, people who were the Eastern Orthodox Church there in Ukraine that had ties to Russia came under scrutiny and was outlawed or banned. And there's a bunch of other things going on there in Ukraine, least of which, I say that sarcastically, is the fact that all presidential elections have been suspended in Ukraine, given the war. So there are a lot of things happening there in Ukraine that are certainly not democratic, and I use democratic in air quotes, but certainly not American in their values or beliefs or the way that they're operating or functioning. So just food for thought. You got people there in Ukraine, and I'm sure if we dug a little deeper, we'd find even more people who are Ukrainian, or people in the Ukraine even who have a much different take on how the war has started and why the war continues than the Western media. So, again, our thoughts and prayers are always with the people in war-torn areas all across the world, especially there in Ukraine. And we know they've lost a lot of people in Ukraine, as well as Russians, and we hope to see that war come to a conclusion as soon as possible. And I do believe that Donald J. Trump, the president of the United States, is working diligently to have that happen. So let's see the next clip.
So a while back, Disney executive mentioned on video, this is when Florida went after Disney, it was all when this was happening. She came out and said, I think she was head of domestic programming for Disney. She said, well, I have two children, 5 and 7. One is trans and the other is pansexual. And I just thought mathematically right away, it's like the chance you have a trans kid is 1 in 3,000. That's not a very high chance. And let's say the chance that you have a pansexual kid is the same, whatever pansexual means. I don't even know how to calculate those odds. But whatever that is rarer than trans because no one ever even heard about it until 5 years ago. So the joint probability that you have a trans kid and a pansexual kid is 1 in 9 million. The odds that you're a pathological narcissist sacrificing your own children to the glorification of your compassion is 8,999,999 to 1. So like, do you have a trans kid and a pansexual kid, or are you a devouring mother? Well, you can look at the odds and decide for yourself. Oh yeah. No kidding.
Is that background music that's in there? Is that?
Yeah, there's a little annoying background music, but
We'll take
good
that out of there.
message.
We'll find
I'll
the
try
clip.
my best.
We'll find the clip that's without the background music. But what Jordan Peterson basically went through there, if you couldn't hear because of the background music, hopefully we'll get that out of there. But he talked about the probability of a Disney executive who made the claim that she was parenting 2 transgender kids or 2 non-binary kids, one being trans, the other being pansexual, made a joke that I think is, warranted. What does pansexual even mean? I would tend to agree with that. I mean, even if you say you're trans and you want to be something else, or you feel like you're something else inside, well, okay, I can get there. I don't agree. I don't think it's a real thing, but I can even get there. That's a choice you can make. But to create pansexual and have it be some sort of esoteric sexual identity is just, I mean, we got to start drawing the line somewhere. Obviously, a lot of people have started to draw that line. But he talked about the probability of you, giving birth to 2 non-binary children is astronomical. The odds are just outrageous. And, he points out, okay, is it that you really gave birth to 2 transgender children, or are you sacrificing your children to the glorification of your own compassion? I mean, just a brilliantly, wickedly eloquent way to put you people are empathomanic is what's really going on. You have an unrefined, uncontrolled, uh, uh, manic thought process, and somehow, some way, this gets thrown on to children who are all but defenseless. And I think, um, as Donald Trump has already started to do, we're going to take a very, very long look at what's acceptable in the public schools in terms of sexualizing children, or let's say educating them with an emphasis on sexual identity and sexual culture. So Jordan Peterson there with some fire breathing knowledge and insight on the transgender and subsequent pansexual conversation.
Something that never made sense to me, because at least what I understand pansexual is that you love anybody and anything. So then wouldn't that just be bisexual? Because the argument is that trans people are real men or real women. So then wouldn't that just fall into bisexual? So yeah, Jordan Peterson has a point that pansexual just does not make any sense even with their logic.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess anything makes sense with their logic to them, and
Yeah.
that's the whole point of it, right? Is it's it. And again, I was saying this the other day to somebody about the mental health conversation, because somewhere along the line here, mental health has been weaponized with this entire LGBTQ movement, and not just the LGBTQ movement, but all three of those cultural wedge issue identity politics movements is BLM, the feminist movement, and the LGBTQ movement. And mental health has now been used as like the driving force. So if you don't affirm everybody's grievances or their perception of their history or their sexual identity or their belief of their oppression, if you don't affirm it, then you are a hindrance on their mental health. And okay, I mean, you could make that claim, and even in some cases, you could argue that there's some truth to it. I mean, if you really, really deep down in your heart believe you're pansexual and somebody doesn't want to affirm that, I bet it does probably have some adverse effect on the way that you feel on a given day.
Yeah.
The question is your baseline logical or not? Or is it based in reality? And if it's not based in reality, then your subsequent mental health can't be seen as something that somebody's doing wrong to you. It's like if I say, "Hey, I want to be called sir, I want to be called your highness. I want to be called king, and I want to be treated as king. And if you don't treat me as king, then then it's going to affect my mental health." Well, yeah, okay. If you're so narcissistic, which is what Jordan Peterson was saying, if you're so narcissistic that you really believe you should start from a baseline where you are king and you should be called king, even if you're not, even if you are king, you should probably not want to be called king or treated like king. It'd probably be a short reign there or one of terror. But if you're not a king and you just decide you are one day, and you're going to make everybody call you that you encounter, and if they don't, then they're harming your mental health. That's a racket, and that's just a psychological racket. And people calling bullshit on that. But my point in bringing that up is I was telling somebody about the mental health conversation in general. When I look at how people discuss mental health, their own mental health, or let's say what you could call the the woke ideology on personal improvement or personal prosperity,
Your self-love kind of thing.
self-love, exactly.
Yeah.
It's all narcissistic.
Mm.
It's all self-centered. It's all based from a self-absorbed point of view. It's all about my energy. It's all about my mood, my what season am I in my life, my journey, my peace. What are my favorite special numbers, my numerological significance in the universe, or my whatever, my zodiac sign, or my rising moon or sun or equinox or whatever. I mean, it's all predicated on narcissism, and it's not by accident that the advent of that sort of woke personal prosperity ideology comes right along with social media and the internet, where everybody's the star in their own movie. I mean, it goes hand in hand. And I think right in this next clip, we're going to have somebody explain to us how an extension of Operation Paperclip actually was a scientific predation on the human mind, both psychologically and physiologically, that makes it very clear how this all happened. And some people should be prosecuted for this. I mean, some people should face their day in court for what has happened here. I mean, this is a crime against humanity. The psyop that's happened to the American people and modern people all over the world. And I think people should at least face charges. I don't know if they end up being convicted and for how long or what the penalty should be, because some of these crimes will have no precedence, right? So it's going to be hard to try and adjudicate how long of a sentence or what type of punishment people should face. But they should be brought up on charge. And my point is, again, the logic, if pansexual is, it's whatever I think. It's my reality, you know?
Yeah.
That's what they're really saying with pansexual. I'm attracted to anything and everything, or anything and nothing, or, you know, it's more of it creates the opportunity for me to attempt to be the master of my own universe without having any submission or faith or any acknowledgement of any hierarchy whatsoever. It's just radical narcissism, and they're force feeding it to our kids on purpose. And you know, your average junior high or grade school teacher, even at the high school level, may not understand what they're doing. They may not get the underlying ideology or the underlying mechanism of what they're doing, but what they are creating is an extremely self-centered, self-absorbed, mentally fragile generation of citizens. And people aren't kids forever. So, you know, eventually they're in their 20s and in their 30s, and like I am, I'm in my 30s, and they're actually a part of society and have a huge impact in making making decisions for all of us. You know, as whether I'm a city planner or I'm a teacher myself, or I just get in the car after a night at the bar drunk and decide to, you know, take her for a spin anyway, right? I mean, these choices have consequences. Ideas have consequences, as the great Steve Bannon says. So pansexual, not a real thing, in my opinion.
The reason that all your computer screens are blue lit, the reason none of them are red lit, the reason none of them pay attention to circadian biology is because that original technology was developed in a government program that Bobby Kennedy knows about, and I happen to know about because I went to medical school at LSU. For those of you who've never heard about Operation Paperclip, you think it's all conspiracy theory. So at Tulane Neurology and Tulane Neurosurgery in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, the CIA started a program there where they would do all these crazy things to monkeys. The CIA wanted to see how they could control things utilizing different things like drugs and things like that. Where the neurosurgeons got involved, which is my clade, we would drill tops of the heads off, put wires into the thalamus, put electricity in there, and kind of see what kind of behavioral changes we could have. One of the guys that was in that program was a guy named Professor Delgado. When he saw that we could control the behavior with the wired device, he said, what if we do it wirelessly? So he checked it in monkeys and checked it in bulls, and it turned out you can do it wirelessly with RFID chips and semiconductors. Then the CIA took it to the next level. They said, well, since this is electromagnetic radiation, what if we did it through light through screens? And it turns out you can. And that's the reason why all your computer screens have the frequencies they have. So why is this all important? Well, the person that set this meeting up between me and Bobby is the patent attorney that made sure that Google and Meta have those things so they can control the things that we all do. Where did the original idea come from that started off in MK Ultra with the CIA? You're going to be surprised when you hear this. It came from the mafia in Las Vegas. They wanted to build a new city in a desert. They enclosed it all, blacked out the windows, invented slot machines that were blue lit. And they found out that they didn't have to take a gun, stick it in your face to steal your money. Then they even got smart. They said, let's give people free alcohol while they're doing that. And they found out they got the money quicker. And that's when the CIA got the idea to start this program. That's really how it started.
Wow. CIA taking a page. I mean, isn't it funny how some of this stuff starts to form together? You look at what we talk about across the course of the podcast. I remember a couple weeks back, I brought up John Gotti and the mafia and the undermining that happened with organized crime and the justice system and jurisprudential precedents. And here we find that the CIA, the intelligence community, is allegedly taking a page out of the mafia's book in their efforts to effectively steal people's money. I mean, when you're doing it at that level psychologically, you're trying to con people or steal people's money, even though they do it voluntarily, which is a cautionary tale for gambling and other vices. But the CIA takes a page out of the mafia's book. Takes an example from the mafia to build technology that now sits in everybody's home and in everybody's pocket or purse or wherever it is. And we keep saying that the next hurdle, the next hill that humanity has to overcome is technology. And I think people see stuff like this and they just kind of pass it on by like, yeah.
I don't mean to pass it by, but I have my suspicions of it just because how are the ones using this technology against us not being harmed themselves by it? That's what I always wonder. So if blue screens are everywhere.
You'd be surprised how many. Well, first off, they say when you see people getting the rockets, you often never see rocket scientists. So there are a lot of people. There are a lot of people who do a lot of expert things that don't indulge in them themselves. Now, blue light is maybe a little bit different because it emits, but it wouldn't surprise me at all to see some of these research and developing some of these R&D scientists who work on this type of technology. When they work on this technology, have very high level of equipment to shield them. Right, like if you go to a dentist's office and you go to get an X-ray, and they put the radiation shield over you. So that's probably one part, and it wouldn't surprise me if they didn't spend much time on their cell phones either.
Yeah.
Or if they had a special modification that's very simple yet very effective that the broad public doesn't know about, isn't really aware of, to help defend against some of the more dangerous elements of the technology. That wouldn't shock me at all. In fact, like I said, they do that in a lot of other areas, like doctors, for example. You'll find doctors who prescribe certain medicine that they would never take themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I saw a clip the other day. I should try and find this where a doctor was charged for wrongly diagnosing people with cancer. Maybe it was cancer, and giving them medicine and getting kickbacks for the treatment. And I think it was a big number too. I think it was something like thousands of patients, like a couple thousand patients or something like that. So, you can guarantee she was prescribing that medicine and she wasn't taking it herself, right?
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that happens. That's what happens when society devolves into crony capitalism and whatever else we have right now, this technocratic oligarchy setup. But yeah, dangerous to think about. I think people are more comfortable not thinking about it because they feel powerless to do anything about it. Number one, the technology is so good, or any of the devices, they're so good. As Netflix, for example, you could find out today that Netflix was causing cancer, and I guarantee you a lot of people still watch it, right?
Yeah.
There's a famous movie to harken back to the mafia, no pun intended. There's a movie called Gotti where Armand Assante, if you guys know who Armand Assante is, he's a great actor. He plays John Gotti. This was an HBO special. You should go watch it. It's considered to be one of the best reenactments, or one of the more accurate depictions of the mob life, if you're interested in that kind of thing. So it follows John Gotti, and Armand Assante plays it. But anyway, John Gotti's very close friend, childhood friend, Angelo Ruggiero, is a smoker. And in some of the opening scenes, Gotti's telling Angelo, to put out the cigarette. And he said, don't you know it causes cancer? And this is supposed to be probably in the late 70s, early 80s. And, John Gotti's telling him, don't you know it causes cancer? Put out the fucking cigarette. And Ruggiero saying, what cancer? Nobody's proven that cigarettes cause cancer. The government has not proved that cigarettes cause cancer. And John Gotti goes, "What government are you talking about?" You know what I mean? And it's just funny. It's not funny. He ended up getting cancer later on in the movie and dying in cancer in a hospice scene where John Gotti's feeding him ice cream. His two childhood friends there, and one's coming to the end of his life. So, point being is, people don't want to accept that these kind of things are true, especially if they're already neck deep in the vice. And as we saw the other day from the video time lapse that we played, where over 60% of people are spending over 60% of their time on the internet. Nobody wants to think that the blue light that's coming from the screen itself is causing them harm, because they don't want to pull away from the screen, myself included. I mean, I spend so much time keeping up with so much stuff on the internet and what's going on. I probably should do better myself. Definitely should do better myself. But that's part of the trap too, right? Is that the thing is so good, you start to just accept whatever the pitfalls are that come with it. And nobody knows that better than your severe gambling addicts, right? They just can't help themselves. They're at the slots, they're betting on games, they're taking action, they're playing blackjack, they're doubling down, they're getting down, they're taking credit, they're doubling down again. They need it's the rush, right? And it's the rush, and that was the gambling part of it. A lot of it is the rush, the adrenaline rush you get, the high you get from the moment before the card is flipped or the dice stop rolling. But with technology, it's just more the connection, which is even a deeper human element than adrenaline, right? The need for excitement. Everybody doesn't need excitement, but everybody does. People do need some excitement, but connection is a much, much broader commodity, right? So everybody needs that sense of connection. And that's why technology has, become so effective. Government's working on you. Good to know. Here's one good example. Bill Gates himself.
Like, wow, this is a bit scary. It's completely new territory.
I mean, will we still need humans?
Not for most things. We'll decide. I mean.
Oh. Does it shock us? Bill Gates, technocrat, futurist, transhumanist, vaccine advocate, saying in the future we won't need humans for most things. You guys can hate Donald Trump all you want to. You can, despise the MAGA movement. You can say that we're all crazy or fascist or extreme or conspiracy theories. You can say whatever you want. That's not a conspiracy. And that's why I tend to stay away from the cultural wedge issues and focus on the signal. And the signal is that technology is the next big decision that humanity has to make. It blows my mind. It shocks me to think about all of these human rights advocates, humanitarian types. We are the world. Let's save the planet types. What they think will happen to human rights when humans are effectively not needed, are rendered unnecessary. I mean, part of what, and I said this on a podcast before, I think part of what has put constraints on genocide in the past is that a king cannot be king of a kingdom with no people, with no subjects, right? So even your most evil, tyrannical, totalitarian dictators and genocidal maniacs had a limit that they would adhere to, because what's the point in being at the top of the heap? What's the point in being all powerful or the most powerful person in the room or in the country, for that matter, if there are no people to reign over, to govern over, to rule over? A ruler is not a ruler unless there are people to be ruled. And so when you kill all the people, there's no fun in being the ruler. I mean, right? And so when we actually start killing all the human beings, you're going to watch tyranny flow pretty quickly, and you're going to see the genocide be amplified. So be cautious of the people who say casually, in the future, we're not going to need humans. Be very, very cautious and weary and skeptical of those people, as if you would need any more reason with a guy like Bill Gates. There's your daily dose. He said it. It's not just what he said, it's how he said it.
He said it like it was nothing.
It's just like it's a foregone conclusion. Like, yeah, we won't need people. And, for somebody who's an athlete, I even think about sports and I go, man, even though we lost that game last night, there was so much human energy and human emotion and connection and investment in that game. You see people from the community come out to the game to support either, whether it was YZ or Hopkins, maybe they have a kid that goes to the school, or maybe they're just connected as alumni like I am, or whatever the case may be. But there's a very real human element there that brings people together in a sense of community, good, bad, or indifferent. It's important. It's important to the fabric of society. I mean, it really is, in my opinion. And if you're somebody out there that, again, like we see a lot of with this narcissistic, postmodern, woke, self-absorbed, self-centered ideology, maybe you don't find any problem with there being less need for human beings. You're already being conditioned to live in a world where you're all alone, at least in your own mind, in your own reality. So what is it going to hurt if you actually end up being alone in reality, right? I mean, I guess that's part of the psyop. It all works together. You see what I mean?
I
mean, it's scary that, yeah, go ahead.
Humans, we need humans for humans. So like him saying we won't need humans, that's almost him saying like we're just all going to go extinct.
Yeah,
because like
the scary part is he doesn't mean himself. That's the catch-22 in the whole thing. And Jordan Peterson makes another good point, speaking of, where he goes, okay, if you think that the world is so bad and that humans are such a hindrance, you go first. There's always a way for you to improve that, and we're not advocating for suicide on this program or podcast, but for you to be thinking that somebody else should do the dying before you do is always something you should put on trial. Right? Yeah. Like the world is messed up and humans are messed up, so these people deserve to die. That's how you got something like the Holocaust or the Mao China or the gulags there in Russia. So, it's you got to be cautious of people. And he just says it so casually. He's like, yeah, for most things. And then people just start laughing in the crowd. It's like, and I get it. They're holding up cue cards at any of those nightly shows to tell people to laugh or to, whatever, clap or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's not funny. I mean, there's nothing funny about that. And there's nothing remotely logical or sane about it either. I think we've kind of devolved into a place where we've accepted the insanity of technology, and that is probably going to end up being the defining characteristic of my legacy on the public stage, is fighting the propensity of technological advancement and just being one person out there in the wilderness saying, guys, this is not right. It's not right. It doesn't make any sense. Okay, cool. You want to watch Netflix? You want the entire worldwide internet at the press of a button on your phone? That's all good. I get that. That's not, there's problems with that as well, but that's not too much. But we start letting people get to a place where we're not going to need humans. We got to be mature enough and courageous enough, and kind of disciplined enough to understand where shit's going to go bad and go bad quick. It's just like in a basketball game. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to make some mistakes. You're not going to make every shot, obviously. You're going to miss some free throws. You're going to miss some defensive assignments. That's going to happen. That's part of the human condition. Human beings make mistakes. We're built to make mistakes. We're flawed. But when you double and triple down, when you quadruple down on something that is wrong, a position is wrong, you gotta put that on trial, and people around you got to put that on trial. It's like, okay, you missed a shot. Are you gonna miss the next 3 shots thinking about it? Are you gonna get back on defense? Are you gonna guard? Okay, you missed this steal right here. Okay, are you gonna just watch and go, missed it? Too bad. Let me just sit here and pout about it. Or Am I going to get back into play and try and make something else happen until the whistle blows? We don't have that in society right now when it comes to technology. We don't have that discipline where it's like, hey, okay, cool. We probably shouldn't have released pornography into the society unfettered, but okay, we had some sexual exploration that needed to occur for whatever God's purpose is in that, all things to his end. But, at some point we got to go, okay, cool. The internet's gotten big, the internet of things. We're going to buy, sell, and trade. We're going to have information on there. We're going to have to fight misinformation on the internet. We're going to have to deal with too many people being connected and then isolated as opposed to going out and physically interacting with each other. Okay. We're going to get to a place where the technology's so good we just accept we don't need humans at all because of AI. I mean, guys, we got to just show some type of logic. And then it's like, well, Royce, what are you saying? There's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it. Okay, then don't tell me that the technology is going to solve any problems. I mean, if we're that weak and we're that, at the whim of our own creative imagination, then why would I trust AI? Right? If my own creative imagination has yielded a sort of self-destruction and self-sabotage that nobody can figure out how to stop now, then why would I trust AI is going to be any different? I mean, the prophecy itself is self-fulfilling, right? I don't know. Maybe I just come from a school of first principles and logic, and most people are living in the postmodern, woke, esoteric ideologies. Like, well, it's better for my energy,
Yeah. It's
my
really
energy is better
nihilist.
because AI is helping me write my daily tweets. And my energy is good. It's like, okay, cool.
I just think of like, then what kind of thing. So like, let's say he gets the world he wants, and like, I'm not in his head, so I don't know if this is actually what he wants. But let's say Bill Gates is the only man left alive. Then what? That sounds like hell. Being alone, and
Yeah.
then like, yeah, the food's getting brought to you. AI can fix your car, so you're still driving around the states, and you're all. But like, you ever seen the Twilight Zone?
Yeah.
You ever seen that episode of the guy that just wants to read, and then everybody disappears, and he has all the time in the world and everything to read, but he hated it because he broke his glasses. And then something as simple as that, it totally wrecked it for him. So it's like, then what? Let's say you're the only dude, Bill Gates. You probably don't know how to change the oil in your car.
Yeah.
And like, that's a simple thing. But what if AI
No.
didn't get programmed to do that?
Right.
And then you're sitting there, oh, I don't have a car anymore. And you're alone. I don't know.
And I think the end goal for them is not to get rid of all the humans. I think they're just telling people, we'll get rid of all of you. And as this next video, I think that we have pulled up here is there's, head transplants. I mean, you knew it was coming after Elon Musk came through with the chips. You knew that head transplants were coming, right? I mean, it's just taking one person's head and putting it on another person's body. These people think that AI and technology will solve the issue of death, that they will be able to overcome death, which is the ultimate sort of sacrilege against God in a way, because it was said that in the Bible that Adam and Eve had eternal life. So it is actually it's actually a rightful instinct for human beings to feel like death is unnatural if you're a Christian, if you believe in God, because death is unnatural. It's hard for people to come to grips with that because there's been such a long period of time where human beings naturally die.
Yeah.
But as far as the Bible goes, the original plan for human beings was for them to be immortal. And Adam and Eve were supposed to live forever, but their sin and subsequent sin of all of their children has made death more and more natural. But it is unnatural for human beings to die. So I get the instinct is to how do we return back to immortality, right? The problem with it is they think there's a shortcut to immortality that will engage more sin.
Mm.
No, the way back to immortality is the submission and faith, and the eternity of heaven. But I'm a crazy Christo-fascist, so I guess I saw one scientific, one bit of scientific data recently that popped up on my feed with the blue light screen that said that science has proved there was an Adam and Eve, that all human genetic material can be traced back to an original man and woman, they believe.
I thought they couldn't even find the Garden of Eden.
Well, I bet it would probably be much easier to track the DNA than it would be to find the garden, I would think.
How would you get the DNA? I guess.
Well, I
maybe
mean,
I don't understand the process at
yeah,
all.
I think the DNA. I think what they're doing is they're finding DNA from human beings that they're digging up and bones and things like that from across time, and they're cross-referencing it. And look, DNA is, if human consciousness is probably the most modern marvel in human existence, which I think it is, because it's not easy to map, right? It's not easy to quantify or to measure. Then DNA has to be the most quantifiable and measurable marvel in human existence. DNA is like one of the most marvelous, spectacular things anywhere. It's like computers are a 1,000th, a 100,000th of the complexity that's in a line of DNA. So, I think that they're trying to cross-reference DNA as far back as they can. But the point is, even when science points to God, people still look away. That was what I was saying. Is even when science says, "Hey, God might be real," you get the scientific types of the scientific community that goes, "Yeah, but no."
The biggest con was people saying that science disproves God. To me, it proves it. And the more and more we find out, it just gets more and more likely that, there's a God.
God particle, you got all kinds of things that point back to God and say, the basic rational logic is you can't go from nothing to something.
Yeah. I was just reading something this morning on that, talking about the Big Bang. Like one of the lead scientists
It's scientifically, I mean, even by science's own standards, it doesn't square. You can't go from nothing, absolute nothing, to something without there being some type of catalyzing event. Now, if they want to make the argument that, very, very tiny, I don't know, particles came together and the energy for the Big Bang, I mean, okay, show me where. I mean, they're trying to do it right now with the Hadron Collider. They're slamming, which is a really scary and weird thing for some people to be trying to do. They're slamming neutrons together at the speed of light, trying to recreate the Big Bang, and they haven't been able to do it. I mean, and they're probably as technical as you could possibly get. I'm sure they spent a lot of money on it, and they haven't been able to recreate it. And it's just, again, you can't go to something, especially something as big as the universe, is what they say the universe is, without there being some catalyzing force. So to me, that points to a God or creator. Now the high end of the technical and scientific community would argue that we're in a simulation and that this universe is a creation of a more intelligent species.
God, they just can't.
I mean, it's just, it's just God. Turtles all the way down. You guys refuse to admit that there's a God.
Yeah. I'll believe that a human made me before.
I'll believe wild. That, it's the Inuaki thing, right? It's and it's just crazy to me. I always tell people, it's like, I'm not saying that the Inuaki aren't real, because I don't know.
What are you what is that?
The story of the Inuaki is that that all of these ancient stories of higher beings or higher powers or gods or angels.
Is this the connection to the pyramids?
Exactly.
Okay, I have heard of this then.
Yeah, and that, for essentially that all of these ancient religions and texts, while unique in their, relatively modern story, have a more ancient connection that transcends those stories, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Hinduism or in South America and some of their origin stories and things, or Judaism or whatever it is. That those are just the versions that were deciphered by the people of their time with inadequate information or inadequate communication skills. But the older story, the more ancient civilizations go back far, far before 300,000, 400,000 years that came from other star systems, close star systems, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, okay, you don't believe a 2,000-year-old story, but you believe, you don't believe the preservation of, let's say, the Judeo-Christian oral and written traditions, which, by the way, have a pretty sufficient chain of custody. I mean, the chain of custody of the Judeo-Christian faith and the Hebrew Bible goes straight back to the rabbinical line of Moses himself. And the Jewish people, the Jews have done a very impressive job of making sure that the texts were given to the next generation, which is why you'll find that a lot of young Jewish boys who went to Hebrew school or in the Orthodoxy have probably at some point in their life handwritten a Torah. Handwritten. Okay? I mean, so my thing is, first of all of these people have these opinions about the Judeo-Christian faith and the story of God and Moses and Abraham and Jacob and Isaac and all of the other figures in the Christian tradition. You people aren't disciplined enough to write no Torah. You're not disciplined to write a book of any sort by hand. Really. I mean, we're so far removed from that type of discipline. I'm real skeptical about your opinions on the matter. But then to say, okay, I don't trust the 2,000-year-old tradition or the 5,000-year-old tradition, but then I trust a story from 300,000 years ago that has probably less evidence, or less substantive evidence, is like, why? What's even important about it? I mean, what are we doing? If the Inuaki are out there somewhere, where are they at? Show they don't want to show up. They're not showing their face. They're not letting it be known. Some people would argue that the government knows about this story or these origin stories, and they're keeping it secret, and that's part of the whole blue beam UFO. Whether you think it's a psyop or it's real, there's some people out there who believe that the government's probably hiding some of this information from us. But damn, they don't do a really good job of hiding anything else. I mean, everything else they do is kind of right out there in your face. So, I mean, I don't know. I just think at the end of the day, people will do anything. They'll jump through a million hoops to deny God, because God places responsibility on all of us to be the best versions of ourselves. And I think we carry like a real deep shame about falling short of that, which is very anti-Christian. It's not a very Christian idea that when you fall short, that you should feel so ashamed that you reject God completely. And I think that's kind of been weaponized against Christians in many ways. You should understand that you're going to fall short, and the real test is, how do you respond to your shortcomings, to your failures, to your flaws and sins? The same way, again, go back to sports. So I miss a shot. How do I respond to missing a shot? I can make mistakes. How do I respond to making mistakes? So, yeah, we go through a million hoops to deny God, but these scientists, boy, even when science points them to God, they still say, nope, we're going to do head transplants instead. Okay, roll the next clip.
This is going to blow your mind.
Yeah, literally.
A startup company called BrainBridge announced today that they believe that they will be able to successfully perform a head transplant surgery in the next 8 years.
Stop it. I mean, does this animation of a head transplant even look remotely safe?
I don't know how you keep blood flowing to the brain. Like,
I mean, does it even look remotely safe? I mean, if you're gonna transplant my head, okay, if you're gonna sell me on this, don't show me an animation where you pull my head off of the body and you can literally see the blood and the cords hanging from the bottom of my severed cranium. Okay, I mean, the tubes and the tendons and the arteries just. I mean, you got to sell me better on this. I mean, it doesn't even look safe. And my fear is, first of all, I would never do this in a million years. But secondly, if it doesn't look safe in an animation, I mean, if you can animate this the best way possible and it doesn't look safe here, probably not going to be safe in real life. That's just my hunch. Now, maybe I'm tripping, and maybe, this is just a crude animation. But run it again. I'm just run it back. For the people who can't watch, start from the beginning, just pause it. Okay, I'll just give you the visual here for all those listening. You got two bodies laying there that look pretty clonish themselves, to be honest. They look like two identical bodies. But, they're renditions, and you got one machine on each head, neck area, and one head's being pulled off. Let's say the head's being pulled off of both, and the machine is like on an assembly line, a factory-style conveyor, where this machine's just literally taking the head about 5 feet over to the right and placing the head or connecting the head to the body. And their claim is that AI, and I would only assume is some version of a 3D printer, right? Or some type of 3D printer, flesh graft type of machine, is just going to safely, what do they call it? Fuse. They're going to fuse, or probably, what do they call it when they use heat to?
Oh, cauterize.
They're gonna recauterize all of the limbs and cords and the skin and everything like that, and you're gonna have a new body with an old brain. Let's play this clip. I mean, this is where they're going.
Going to blow your mind. A startup company called BrainBridge announced today that they believe that they will be able to successfully perform a head transplant surgery in the next 8 years. The way that this would work is you would take a person with a perfectly healthy and active brain, but their body has cancer or paralysis, and transplant it to a brain dead donor body. What's crazy is that they said that by doing this, the person that's receiving the new body would still be able to maintain their memories, cognitive abilities, and consciousness. They say that the brain could last several hundred years if it had a good working body, and that might be a potential in the future, but that this would also give people with different ailments a second chance. The procedure is advanced and way over my head, but it uses robotics and AI technology to make sure that the precisions and refusing are exact. It's crazy because you have to wonder if somebody that was 6'4" will end up 5'6", or the other way around.
Well, and that's going to be the thing, right? I mean, it'll start to become more of a cosmetic desire than it is a medical necessity for life-threatening illnesses or defects.
The human traffic market's about to have a lot more demand.
I mean, come on.
Because you need someone else's body. And if they're discussing that the brain lasts longer than the body, you need to find a younger body. Why didn't they start with an arm? There's so many amputee people that probably would just love an arm. And you have a cadaver that has a functioning arm. Why did they not start with the arm? Let's figure out how to put this arm onto this person. They had to go for the head.
I mean, it's just look, I'm skeptical this will ever work.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say that. I'm risk. And if it does work, there's some things, there's all these, ancient stories and parables where it's like, you can bring someone back from the dead, but are they going to be themselves? This feels like one of those kinds of moments where, yeah, I can get your head on a different body, and you may even be able to animate yourself, but I'm not so certain that you're going to be
you can probably tell me your memories, but is your soul actually there?
No, I'm even saying, like, are you going to be like autistic all of a sudden? Right? Like, if vaccines cause autism, I'm sure head transplants cause some type of problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you can't tell me you're going to put this brain back on. You can't tell me if we can't solve autism first that you're going to do head transplants. You can't tell me if we can't get rid of cancer first that we're going to do head transplants. That seems like a leap in technology that doesn't square in my mind. But that's not even the important thing. The important thing is that they're even thinking about this. Again, what did she say? She said that a brain can live for
150 or what?
700 years.
But she's saying 700.
I think she said, play it again. Let's play it again in here. I think she said several hundred years.
going to blow your mind. A startup company called BrainBridge announced today that they believe that they will be able to successfully perform a head transplant surgery in the next 8 years. The way that this would work is you would take a person with a perfectly healthy and active brain, but their body has cancer or paralysis, and transplant it to a brain dead donor body. What's crazy is that they said that by doing this, the person that's receiving the new body would still be able to maintain their memories, cognitive abilities, and consciousness. They say that the brain could last several hundred years if it had a good working body, and that might be a potential in the future, but that this would also give people with different ailments a second chance. The procedure is advanced and way over my head, but it uses robotics and AI technology to make sure that the precisions and refusing are exact. It's crazy because you have to wonder if somebody that was 6'4" will end up 5'6", or the other way around.
Well, it's gonna completely be. I think the first thing that would happen is you'd see people select for the operation on a cosmetic basis. You'd have people who want to be taller. You'd have people who'd want to have uh, 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 bigger penis, all kinds of shit. You know what I mean? Shit like that. That would be pretty dark and twisted. But it's we're and I show these things because it's like I talk about it, and I think it doesn't really land unless you hear that people are actually considering this. I mean, this is a real company. They're BrainBridge. You can look them up. Their technology or their attempt at patent is there for people to find, and this is what people are really working on. And my question is, who are going to be the test subjects?
Yeah.
And I mean, you just know if plastic surgery is any indication, the first few people that go on to the table there for BrainBridge are not coming off that table. I mean, so well, they're going to try it on monkeys, and how are they going to be able to know that the monkeys have this have? I mean, it's just I don't know, guys. If we want to go here, fine. It seems like we're going here anyway. I think we should take a long look at if this is where and what we should be doing. And their excuse is always, well, if we don't find a way for AI to help us live longer so we can, travel to Mars, right? It's like, since it takes us 4 years to get there, you live to be 70 years old on average. 4 years is a long time. Half of a decade, 5 years is a long time, barring that the trip goes without a hiccup. And you get a couple delays, you end up being out in space for 6 years. And that's a long time for somebody who only lives to be 70. Now, if you can extend it to 700, now the 4-year trip in space doesn't seem so long, right? And but again, I'm just not buying it. I mean, all of this fear porn about the end of the world and cataclysmic events and asteroids. I think the first logical choice for cataclysmic defense is to drill down. I think the subterranean Earth provides the most logical and feasible protection against, I don't know, solar flares or asteroids or thermonuclear war or, some type of topical problem. And I think that's where we should be investing our time and energy first. Let's do the thing that's feasible first, not the brain bridges. Let's dig down, because we know we can do it, and create environments or habitats that are subterranean that can withstand whatever hits the surface of the earth, because the earth has obviously been here a long time. So it's probably not going anywhere. It's not going to see anything in the future that it hasn't seen in the past, albeit a black hole. So that's the one fear you could say, at least in scientific theory, is that a black hole could spontaneously pop up and suck the earth into it, right? And everything would be gone in an instant. I don't necessarily. The technology you would need for that is to be able to predict when and where black holes occur, because if not, you wouldn't be able to be prepared for any of this shit to matter, right? Unless the objective is to just spread out all across the universe as far as possible, which at that level, again, it's like, all right, so what are we doing though? I mean, if we're not going to live together, we can just send everybody in spaceships all across the universe. then the climate change was definitely a racket. It's not going to be fucking relevant anymore. So, we got to get our ducks in a row here in the science, where science has become just outlandish in its scope and in its ambition. It's just like everything, just, all the wires are getting crossed. And I'm sitting here as a guy who, did relatively well in my science portion of the ACT and thinking, you guys are just becoming obnoxious. Brain bridge? You're going to take my head and put it on a 5'9" guy's body. That's going to look fucking weird, number one. There's going to be a big-ass head on a little guy's body. If you put my head on Tanner's body, it's going to look weird.
I bet you wouldn't even know how to use my arms either because you're so used to having longer arms.
Oh, man, I'd be knocking shit over. I'd be fucking tripping over my own feet. I mean, it'd take you, I don't know, you're going to need all several hundred years because it's going to take me 30 to know how to use that body the right way.
Yeah,
and I'm not even so sure you're going to be able to use your arms. You may be alive. You may be able to be, to overcome some type of organic disease and whatnot. But, am I going to be able to, I'm 5'9", I put my head on Royce's body. Now I'm going to go dunk a basketball. It's like, come on, dude, stop. Cut it out. Cut it out. Next clip.
Why aren't any neurologists telling you about nicotine patches or nicotine gum or nicotine vegetables? There's a reason. And then did you know also that it's been proven to cure glioblastoma tumors? In less than 72 hours, they can dissolve it just using 2 doses of nicotine intravenously over a 72-hour period. Well, are there oncologists using nicotine intravenously to reverse glioblastomas, which represents half of all brain tumors right now being diagnosed and called turbocancers? And if not, why not? How come we can go find this information in the published medical literature? We can show you what they published and what they found. And how come science found in labs and peer-reviewed and approved and published, how come it doesn't make its way into the sight and ears and clinics of medical professionals around the world? Type 1 diabetes is cured with nicotine, just so you know, we can show you the studies. And then autism in adults and in teenagers, they have found the violent behavior they often express, the antisocial behavior within 7 days of a 7-milligram nicotine patch.
Well, that is an interesting development. And here we have a guy who I've seen speaking out about a lot of scientific norms, talking about the potential benefits of nicotine. Can't confirm or deny, and certainly don't want to be giving medical advice about nicotine being healthy for you, as opposed to the traditional or conventional wisdom that it's very dangerous, causes cancer. Here, the claims being made that nicotine actually dissolves brain tumors. This wouldn't shock me, to be honest. It wouldn't shock. It's just like ivermectin, right? Mm-hmm. We're finding out now. We heard from Dr. Pierre Corey that ivermectin is having some type of efficiency or some type of success in dissolving cancers and tumors of the colon, the bladder, colorectal, urinary tract, and places like so. And it's a totally repurposed drug. I mean, ivermectin was originally used for parasites, which you could argue that cancer is a type of parasite in a way. So it actually makes sense somewhat. But it was used for parasites and what is most famously river blindness in Africa. And now it's being repurposed and finding all kinds of uses. So it wouldn't surprise me if nicotine is one of those, drugs that actually has some type of benefit in certain situations. I think what this guy's pointing out is there seems to be a lot of places in scientific research and medical research where studies have been done and shown certain positive effects for certain types of ailments and diseases and must be intentionally suppressed. And that wouldn't shock us either, would it? I mean,
yeah, it's hard because at least from what I understand, and I could be misled, but nicotine itself doesn't cause cancer. It's all the other things that they add in it, and also the medium, or the medium that we use it. So like smoking anything just is not good for you.
Right.
So you're gonna get all the tar and everything bad. Lip pillows or Zins, it's kind of the same thing, that it's bad for your teeth and your gums to have something sitting there. But the nicotine itself is not
like raw, pure nicotine.
Raw nicotine is probably as damaging as caffeine. So like probably would do better without it, but it's not gonna kill you, and
Well, I
a
mean,
healthy
this guy,
body can handle it.
this guy's saying that nicotine can help completely cure you of some type of brain tumors. Um, hey, I don't know. All I know is as we keep going through this process, and more people have the platform to get on the internet and speak their mind and talk about the things that they've done and encountered in their work, their scientific work, we are going to find out that there has been a huge cover up about long-term disease, long-term chronic disease. I think that much we can agree on. So we'll continue to watch and see as these develop. I think once a week we should try and pull in some scientific research that contradicts what they conventionally said is the scientific consensus, right? Because that was definitely weaponized against us during COVID, where, believe the science. It's like, all right, well, first of all, there's not really a consensus in science. There are some consensuses in science, but none of them are 100%. I'll give you an example. My MMA coach, Greg Nelson, had one of the most rare cancers on record at the Mayo Clinic. He was treated for a cancer that got into his nerve cancer. And so he was on ketamine drip. I'll have Greg Nelson back on so he can tell the story himself. But he was on a ketamine drip so bad where he was awake, but it was completely black. It's what they call the K-hole, right? And he was alive and knew what was going on, but he was completely incapacitated. Anyway, he ended up surviving that cancer, and he's thriving. He's one of the healthiest guys I know for his age, but he had a very, very experimental cancer treatment done with stem cells and whatnot. It was one of the first times they tried it at the Mayo Clinic, and he survived it. The survival rate for his type of cancer, first of all, they didn't even have many on record, and the survival rate was 0, and he survived it. And so, again, that's an example where you could say it's a miracle. You could say it's his will to fight, which I would tend to agree with, had something to do with it. But the scientific consensus isn't always right. Just like people who go into a coma and they wake up 20 years later, right? I mean, their family members and loved ones are you could say stupid enough or wise enough to keep them on life support, and all of a sudden one day their body's healing, they wake up from a coma. I mean, this happens. Somebody's in a coma for 20 years and they wake up and they're just fine, and they can move around, and they remember they had, so we even in the darkest sense, part of our scientific consensus and our thought process around science is geared towards convenience, and the convenience of sometimes letting somebody die is just a way easier. Unless, for example, we want to brain bridge one head to another, unless it's some outlandish scientific, we don't want to give you ivermectin for COVID, but we would love to be able to transplant your head onto another body. It's like, yeah, fuck you. Fuck off.
Be signing an executive order having to do with COVID and schools. Lindsay?
Yeah. So this first executive order, it prohibits federal funding for COVID-19 mandates, vaccine mandates in schools.
Okay, and that will meaning they want to clear that up, the discrepancy.
So any schools that require students to be vaccinated with COVID-19 shot, then there's no more federal funding. So.
Okay.
Signed, sealed, delivered.
Okay, that solves that problem.
Sir, will the Department of Education have to handle that?
Yes, it'll go through the Department of Education. Okay? Thanks.
This is a really big moment, I think, in Donald Trump's presidency here, because he was, in some ways, scrutinized by even those in the MAGA movement or the freedom health movement what you would probably call the Make America Healthy Again, the MAHA movement, for his role in fast tracking the COVID-19 vaccine through Operation Warp Speed. This is kind of a redeeming moment, I believe, for Donald Trump to, in some way, admit that he was lied to, that he got that wrong, and that he was misinformed. And I think a lot of us are starting to realize just how misinformed we were during the COVID-19 pandemic. And obviously there's a lot. I think the FDA came out with a warning that the Pfizer vaccine does in fact cause a whole host of potential side effects that are not casual. Say they're not light side effects. Okay, they're dangerous side effects. So I think this is a redeeming moment for President Trump and all of us out there like myself who refuse to get vaccinated, and refuse to have their families vaccinated, and haven't taken the vaccine and had to withstand the criticism and the scrutiny and the insults from the mainstream media and all these other experts telling us that we need to trust the science or we're a danger to our communities and to our loved ones. So a cool moment, I think, maybe flown under the radar, but we're getting the vaccine mandates out of the schools, and that's going to be at the national, federal level. If you try to mandate COVID-19 vaccines, you will lose access to your federal funding. I think this is long overdue, something that Joe Biden should have done. He had more than enough evidence to do, and obviously he didn't, to indoctrinate it in the scientific consensus. And Donald Trump steps up and does what real men and real leaders should do. So thank you, Donald J. Trump, for your diligence and your courage to protect our children at the schools.
Attendant who's twerking cost her dream job.
I didn't think that, being so happy can turn into something like this.
Nell Diallo was having a great time dancing and twerking in the aisle on an empty plane before an early morning flight.
I decided to just take advantage of the moment to wake myself up and kind of get myself hyped up for my day, basically.
She posted the video on TikTok along with the caption, "What's wrong with a little twerk before work?" But after the video went viral, she says Alaska Airlines fired her. What did they say to you?
They just said that I broke their social media policy.
Nell had only been on the job for 6 months. She says she was twerking to celebrate the end of her probationary period. Why did you decide to post the video?
And I was really proud of myself that I came so far. I just didn't think that my video and my post and the way I was dancing would be deemed as inappropriate.
Well, this is obviously intended to be funny, although I believe this is a real story. And in fact, I feel bad that she lost her job. I mean, this is part of the unfortunate side of the internet, and just the normalization of culture that we've created is here. I think this young woman meant this to be completely harmless.
Yeah.
And now she's lost her job, which these flight attendant jobs are pretty decent paying jobs, got benefits and whatnot. And obviously, I wouldn't be a flight attendant under any circumstances, but these flight attendant jobs are pretty good jobs for young people to get and put away some money in their retirement 401k. So it's unfortunate that she lost her job, but it is kind of funny that her our instinct is that everything is for the internet, that everything is to be shared, or that all of our successes are to be played out and sort of reported on the internet. And to be honest, it is kind of strange to look at as somebody who has a relatively decent sized following on social media. It is really strange to watch other people's perception of their own importance in the context of social media, right? It's just the things they post are like, you have 100 followers. Who are you telling this to, right? And now I don't know if this woman has a huge following or not, but the point is you probably should err on the side of caution when posting stuff on the internet in general, because especially if you have a job, hey, it's completely reasonable that your job has policies around social media. Why? you work for a company, you post something on social media that's controversial, and then they have to, deal with the ramifications of being associated with their brand or company, or maybe they get sued or, whatever the case may be. There's their company to decide one way or another. Now, if we dig into the airlines a little bit deeper, we'll probably find that a lot of their practices are so corrupt. A lot of their corporate and practices are so ethically and morally compromised that for them to draw the line on this young woman twerking is just an exercise of sort of tyrannical power, which
I wonder if
I
it
think it
wasn't
probably
even
is.
an issue of her like dancing. It's
Yeah.
just, maybe it is just an excuse when they say like social media policy, but I bet it's something to do with more NDA because she was on a plane that looked like there was nobody in there quite yet. I think it's like a NDA kind of breach.
Oh, because she wasn't supposed to be on there before?
Well, no, like you're just not supposed to film. I bet even if she posted a picture, because it sounded like I don't know the policy, but
Yeah.
I mean, if she just got out of her training period, yeah, she's new fish, and they're like, okay, out of here, we'll replace you.
Yeah. Well, and they come in quick and out quick too. Quick to hire, quick to fire. Slow to hire, quick to fire, I think is the way the slogan goes. Or quick to hire, faster to fire. I'm not sure. But anyway, unfortunate, pretty young woman. Looked like she was dancing. She had some decent rhythm there, just having a good time. Hey, victim of the internet and the social media culture and the where social media and the corporate world collide, right? Be careful out there. Be careful out there. It could be your last twerk at work, right?
I learned a lot about women. I think I learned exactly how the fall of man occurred in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were in the Garden of Eden, and Adam said one day, wow, Eve, here we are, at one with nature, at one with God. We'll never age, we'll never die. And all our dreams come true the instant that we have them. And Eve said, yeah, it's just not enough, is
it? No, that's not funny.
I was just waiting for more.
So that was kind of his point.
Oh, God.
That's kind of what he was saying.
I mean,
man. It doesn't get much better than that. It doesn't get much better than that, I got to say. That's from the Joe Budden podcast. And at one point, I was in contact with their producer to maybe go on the Joe Budden podcast. I think the people on the podcast there have a much different view of the world than I do, especially when it comes to politics. But I see some clips from them, and they have some fun on the podcast. There was a clip of Melissa Ford, who's one of the co-hosts. She used to be a very famous video vixen in the hip-hop world. I think she was probably most famous for being in the Hot in Here music video with multi-platinum recording artist Nelly, Midwest's own, one of the few artists in the rap industry to go diamond, sell over 10 million records for his debut album Country Grammar, which was a classic, by the way. I mean, as a 90s kid who grew up in the neighborhood and listened to rap music and loved hip hop growing up, Nelly's Country Grammar was probably one of the most iconic hip hop and rap albums of all time. So Melissa Ford there behind the 8 ball on the punchline of the joke, so much she became the punchline of the joke. It's funny.
I felt bad for her because she still looked confused when they all started laughing, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, that's kind of the point of the joke." She was still sitting there like, "What? What was the joke?"
And it's, hey, I don't want to be the guy that says it, but hey, women are special creatures. Women have a certain way of viewing the world, and men have a certain way of viewing the world. And not to say one is better than the other, categorically better than the other, but it is amusing and interesting to observe and to talk about. And there we see a story as old as time itself, where it does seem that women just are never really satisfied. I'm being honest. Now, I really do think that the entire modern or postmodern feminist movement is predicated on this kind of axiomatic human condition of women. Is like, it's very easy to convince women that they should want more, that they're not content with their life, whatever that life may be. It's very easy to convince all people that they should want more, but it's especially easy to sort of fantasize, kind of create this facade, this mirage of what the modern woman wants or should want. And social media is doing a big number on women right now. If there's not a good example, is all the augmentation that women are doing to their bodies unnecessarily.
Right.
I mean, and they're definitely taking shortcuts where, again, you could work out and more than not get the size, type of body that you want. Now, breasts are different, right? Because breasts, whether to make them bigger or to get them reduced, the breast that you have or the breast that you have, it's kind of difficult. Your working out, let's say, isn't going to probably change the size or shape of your breasts. So that one's somewhat understandable, but everything else, I mean, it's just out of hand. It's the face. It's the, it's everything. I mean, people.
I saw a commercial the other for Ozempic, and
dangerous.
that broke my heart because it had a shot and you see the syringe laying on the like a coffee table, and then big letters that say "Be confident," and then hands coming to grab the syringe, and I'm like, that is so sad that we've gotten this far.
Sinister.
It's literally a shot. I don't know. Dude,
Be
you could
confident.
have made it a pill
Kill
form.
yourself in order to get the approval of others. I mean, it's just, and then they'll say that I'm crazy or I'm a misogynist. They'll say I'm body shaming people, or I don't understand how hard it is to be a woman in a society where they're hypersexualized. And look, I get it. I get it. Men are heathens, and we're fucking cavemen, and especially when it comes to physical and sexual attraction or romantic pursuits, we are, brutal in our, in our selection. We will select for what looks better a lot of times, more times than not. And so that slims the pool down. And there are a lot of women out here that just feel that they don't have the physical attributes to get into the game. But a lot of that is probably more so your personality than it is your looks. Now, I mean, I don't want to pigeonhole it or try and shortchange the fact that as social media continues to become more prominent and the over sexualization of our society and culture happens, that men aren't more brainwashed to choose for shallow how a woman looks. I'm not saying that that's not a thing that women have to deal with. But what I'm saying is, even if that's the case, if you have to break into the game by the way you look, you got to really ask yourself, is this the type of relationship you really want? Long term. It's like people think they're trying, and now it's getting so bad where it used to be women were trying to modify their bodies to have one man to kind of create the circumstance for them to attract an individual man who they can call their own. Now I get the sense that women are trying to create the circumstance, the physical appearance to become highly transactional as a sexual commodity. And whether it's on OnlyFans or whether, whatever, even if it's in the corporate workplace, it's not a healthy place where we are when people are willing to take Ozempic, which, I mean, it's so obviously going to have bad side effects and recalls in the very near future. It already is, so we're at a bad place again where we want to, instead of eating healthier, instead of praying to God, instead of fasting 5 times, 5 days once a year, we'd rather, do head transplants. It's like, let's rein it in, guys. Let's rein it in. I'm not trying to dig on my women out there, but it does seem to me that the crux of the feminist movement is something like, all you women deserve more. And even worse, all you women deserve whatever it is you think you deserve. And that's just not a real tenable worldview.
For anybody.
Yeah, for anybody.
Like, I could wish that I'm over in Africa, but I'm in Minnesota right now. It just is what it is.
It is what it is. And men, but the problem with it is men sort of have to think like that. Our government and this establishment has created the circumstance where they've tried to allow for women to be able to think that way, right? I mean, the whole thing is, again, this goes back to the postmodern, self-absorbed woke ideology is, we'll put you all on universal basic income. Then you can live whatever life you want to live. Then anything goes, right? And people don't see the connection between work and sort of a logical, reality-based way of thinking, right? I mean, when you work a job like you work here for us, and it's whether you like it or love it, some days you probably like it, some days it's probably like up, another day at work, some days you probably hate it. But it has a way of putting 2 railroad tracks down on the road in front of you and keeping you on those tracks. It's when you go to universal basic income and you let anybody just do whatever, you'd be surprised how quick people find themselves in some strange, fantastical, warped reality. And, like a hard day's work, again, this is biblical. Men are supposed to sweat by the toil of our brow. Women are supposed to endure pain during childbirth. If you're a woman out there and your childbirth went really well, you have exceptional favor with God, and you should probably have more kids because it wasn't written that's going to be the norm. But a lot of you women now are opting to have a career instead of having children. And then you wonder why you're unhappy or your life feels out of balance, or you can never achieve that sort of universal energetic harmony that you're looking for from your morning zodiac. It's like you were intended to have a child. Your womb is you're literally rejecting your physical body. Your womb is there. Your hormones are there. Your monthly cycle is there to create the circumstance where you have a child. As long as you reject that, you're going to be at odds with yourself. And then you go, oh, well, maybe I'm a man. No, you're not a man. You're a woman. You're just in rejection of your fundamental nature. And, I just feel bad for women. I do. And it's like my campaign. During my campaign, obviously I'm going against a woman. I'm going for another woman's seat now. Peggy Flanagan, who's the lieutenant governor of Tim Walz, she's running for Tina's open seat. So there's another woman. And it's always going to be, well, he's a misogynist. He doesn't understand the hardships and plights of women. I understand. I'm trying to help women as much as I possibly can to see how they've been tricked and sort of brainwashed in some cases by other women. And you can tell this from women, the overwhelming report of people who've done transgender surgery or, whatever, they regret it. Women who have had to, get abortions, in a lot of cases, they regret it. Some don't. I'm not saying they all do, but some of them would regret it. And, women who even have had augmentations, whatever the case may be, they end up going back and getting it done again, or whatever the case is, because they regret it, So a lot of this, and this goes back to Cosmo, and there's a great clip that I posted on Cosmo where she was talking about the founder of Cosmo and what the entire point of Cosmopolitan magazine, which was a very big publication, by the way, in its heyday, the whole point of the psychology was to get women to believe that they should use their sexual promiscuity to advance themselves in the corporate workplace. And the whole gaffe of it was, she was the founder of Cosmo, the editor, the editor in chief, whoever she was. I think she was the founder though. Her whole motif of the modern cosmopolitan woman is one that forewent sort of sexual, ethical, moral tradition and used her sexuality as a way to climb the corporate ladder, which means that she would sleep with whoever she needed to in order to rise to the top. And if it was a married man, then it'd be a married man, or whatever the case may be. However, the person who founded the magazine didn't want anybody sleeping with her man. Right? I mean, this is the rules are for thee and not for me that you see from a lot of these narcissistic individuals. So women, be on the watch. The predators are many. Not who you think, not the man in the wilderness. Trust me, you come into the wilderness and there's a man and a bear. You want the man, okay? The bear is dangerous, bloody dangerous. Go ahead.
What are you doing? Can I come home from work one day and it just be normal? What is that? Is that real? Hi, Mom. Are you serious? Oh my God. What do you have to say for yourself?
Now, this is obviously meant to be humorous, and maybe this whole thing is a skit. It wouldn't surprise me if it is. But even in the skit, isn't it funny? Even in the skit, even in the motif of this skit, it appears, it sounds like the wife has a naggy sort of tone about what can only be seen as the dad having a good joke of riding around the neighborhood as Michael Myers with the kid on the little back bumper, bike attachment, a little toddler with the same Michael Myers outfit on, and I think it's just super cute and funny. But mom doesn't sound like she's having too much fun with it. Obviously, dad is a prankster, and he does shit like this all the time. She goes, "Can I come home from work one day and just be normal?" It makes you wonder where dad is all day when she's at work. But that's that now I'm extrapolating out. But again, I just put this one in there today because I came across it and I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. But I guess as the conversation is going today, again, you find women who don't, you can't, a lot of women say, oh, dad's works too much. He doesn't spend enough time with the kids. Now you got a dad who's, taking the kid out and they're having a little bit of fun together. And this mom saying, hey, I just wanted to be normal. What do you have to say for yourself? You're going too far. It's like, and that's just a human condition thing, right? Men are never happy either. But on mass, I think men are much more much easier to satisfy, at least on the baseline. Men are, because we're much simpler creatures. Like there's an old saying, if you give a man respect and food and sex, he'll pretty much be content. Now the respect part isn't easy, right? Because respect is a little bit more of a inexact science, right? Respect is kind of what you would call it's subjective, right? Respect is a very subjective term, but in general, I have to agree. If you give a man respect, sex, and food, he's pretty much gonna, play his lane.
Yeah.
It's granted, I get, social media and porn and, the infidelity thing and guys cheating. And I get that part, right? That's something different. But I think at base, guys are pretty content, It's women who, in my opinion, and what I've seen, and I've experienced in my own life. I'm not just saying it as like a third-party onlooker into the internet. I mean, I've seen it where the women have real conundrum about what they actually want out of life. And I think it's been intentionally done. And, do you want a man who stays at home with the kids? Some women would love to work and, I just love a man who'd stay at home with the kids. And before you know it, she loses all respect for him. And then she starts to talk to him like she's the one who pays the bills. And I've seen this a lot. And all of a sudden the man's sitting there going, wait a second, you wanted to work and you said you wanted me to stay at home with the kids. And now all of a sudden I'm doing it and you treat me like I'm a hump, like I'm a bum.
Yeah.
And it's just stuff like that. And I would just caution people in these relationships to understand the psychological things that are working on you that you don't even understand, and be cautious, because a lot of you got good relationships out there that you should be trying to foster and save or reconcile and remedy, that you should be trying to build up, families that you should be trying to keep together. And we increasingly see the divorce rate rise. That's sad and unfortunate. So again, I'm not getting on women. I'm just saying, when you follow the Peggy Flanagans, for example, I'll just throw one out there. She seems like a woman who's never happy. And is Ilhan Omar, another one. Seems like a woman who's just never really happy. And somehow they become the leaders of the women's movement. It's like, give me Carrie Lake, happily married, just wants people to be able to speak the truth on the internet or wherever they are, social media, loves her country, believes in having a border, married, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Pays respect to her husband every time that she speaks, and she's not so angry. They make us seem like we're the angry, extreme fascists, but when you look at the women on our side, now even Marjorie gets a little animated, right? She's a door kicker, but even Marjorie, these women do not seem angry. The feminist movement, I think, is so predicated on like this raw, unfettered anger from women, this sort of contempt and resent of men as a species. That I mean, how do you plan on having a relationship that's any good? And maybe they don't. I mean, I kind of get the sense too that increasingly the perspective of the feminist movement is, like I said, Anna Navarro, men are useless. We don't need men. And then you find yourself in a lesbian relationship, some weird quagmire lesbian relationship. No disrespect to the lesbians out there, but lesbian relationships tend to be more violent domestically than any other combination of relationships.
Yeah. The highest divorce rates too. I think it's like upwards of 70%.
Lesbian relationships tend to be more physically violent than homosexual male relationships, than gay relationships.
Yeah.
Which is just a crazy stat. I mean, because traditionally men are more violent than women, but you get two women together without a man in the equation, and all of a sudden you get chaos, and that has to be a test to something that's going on in the women's psyche, although it's never brought up, but we do it here on Please Call Me Crazy because we don't give a shit. We just talk like it is, love women, but there's some questions to be answered. Okay, let's go to Rick Pitino.
And be a basketball player. Dig in. Every time you miss a shot, your game deflates. We don't care about your missed shots. Play defense. You guys keep blowing opportunity upon opportunity upon opportunity. You're like children with bad things happening. Instead of digging in and be tougher, you wilt. Where is your toughness? Where have you guys been raised that you're so weak mentally that you just give up when something doesn't go right for you? Don't you know what adversity is all about? That's the game of life, not the game of basketball. You don't get down when things go wrong. You dig in and get tougher. Your whole life's going to be adversity. Learn how to deal with it.
That was a nice transition of videos right there.
It was, wasn't it?
It was.
Hey, Tanner putting the videos together. Did you do that on purpose? Did you listen to them ahead of time?
I did not fully for this one. No.
Wow. Hey, a round of applause for Tanner. We got to get some sound effects on the podcast. Maybe you can add some applause, some audio effect applause in this part when you go to put it together. But yeah, this is probably the fourth consecutive time that the order of the videos has a theme to it that allows for me to tell a story and weave together the meaning, the underlying meaning of what we're watching, which is important. I think if you're going to watch content on the internet and the internet's going to be a big part of our lives, the least we could do is try and tell a story that's worthwhile and that tries to connect the dots of meaning and show a bigger, broader picture of life. Hope I've been able to do that on this episode. Here you got Rick Pitino with a group of young men, and he's just talking about how soft the generation is, right? He's talking about, and it's something that I see too as a coach, and it's widespread. And again, I'm not going to throw it on women, but there is a hierarchy, and there has been a sequence of events, political, social, cultural events that have gotten us to where we are. And the feminist movement was at the head of it. It was the driving force, but the feminist movement transitioned us into what you would call an egalitarian frame of reference, a sort of egalitarian worldview where we have to try and socialize the risk, which is a more communist form of government and organization, socialize risk by giving everybody an equal amount. And this is where you get things like participation medals or sports where people don't keep score because the thinking is that their emotional fabric, that their psyche is so fragile that they can't take defeat. That's what the whole MO is that, human beings are so fragile emotionally that they can't accept defeat. And really what it is they can't take accountability. for their own shortcomings, for their failures. They can't come to grips with their failures. This is a problem. This does not create strong people, let alone strong men. And by God, there is a biological difference where men do have to be stronger than women. If not for anything else, because of the things that women do to men. Okay. And if you don't understand how that system's set up, you got something where they call no-fault divorce, where a man marries a woman, and then all of a sudden they decide to get divorced or split up, or maybe the woman's still living with the husband, and she just decides she's no longer happy, and she goes to file for divorce, and she's with the new guy, and all of a sudden she gets the house that the man probably paid for and built with his own hands. Not that we really build houses with our own hands anymore, but you get the point. He went to sweat by the toil of his brow to come up with the energy and thus the economic means to buy a house that he's going to be indebted for the rest of his life for most working class American citizens. And all of a sudden, a woman's in there banging some guy who she just met down at a bar, convincing herself that this guy's better than the guy who sacrificed for her. I mean, it's just, and God bless you all out there. This is not an episode to rail on women. I'm just giving you the man's perspective. And what's sad about it is, what's really sad about it is you end up having sons that you need to be coached by a man, and you've taught them to be women. But they got to compete against other men. And so the two things become very incompatible. And what you have is what Rick Pitino's saying is you have these young basketball players that are so emotionally fragile that they start to sabotage their own goals, even when they have all the tools and the skills to accomplish the things they want to accomplish. They start to self-destruct and self-sabotage because their emotions are more important than the goal. For me, even an example is, as much as I dealt with anxiety in my teenage years growing up, and remember, I was diagnosed with anxiety at the very moment when I was becoming nationally known for basketball. So the first rankings that came out for my class of 2009, my graduating class, was when I was 15 years old in the summer. It was the same summer that I had my first round of panic attacks. And no matter what, I don't know if it was my respect for the game of basketball, my love for the game of basketball, or the coaches that I had around me. I would assume it was a combination of all three. But never once did I use my anxiety internally in my own mind. Never once did I use my anxiety as an excuse for myself not to perform well. Never did I use my anxiety or my mental health or my emotions as a scapegoat to not perform well. Nor did I let it allow me to become overly emotional. Right? I took the game very personal. I competed at a high level. For some people with anxiety or more, let's say, feisty, angry temperament can pay dividends in team sports, especially contact sports, because it does get physical. And we know that emotion and energy and intensity can help generate physical momentum. So I'm not saying that I didn't get emotional, but the goal was always first in mind, is winning. And we've gone to a society and a culture where winning is no longer so important. And I guess winning isn't everything. And we should always preface it by saying, hey, winning and losing isn't everything. But I will say that winning is a much better goal than to be selfish, especially in the context of team sports. Winning is a much better goal. There's a hierarchy. Winning isn't the most important thing. It's not life or death, because it's sports. People actually live and die every day. So it's much more important. But winning is a much better goal than my own individual success. Right? My own individual success is an example of selfishness within the context of team sports. So winning is a team thing. Individual success is a me thing. I think a lot of people, again, are absorbed with themselves. They got the individual in mind. And team sports should be a place where young children and young people are learning to surrender the self for the team, for the collective. And it's so weird that you got these postmodern liberal types that promote collectivism, But then they undermine the very institutions that would help teach how to make people better, more selfless people.
Yeah.
You learn to be selfless when the game actually counts and you and the man next to you, you and your teammate have to sacrifice the individual for the betterment of the team. Even if you lose, if you lose and you and your teammates, like we lost last night, you and your teammates have spent a year together or 4 years together, bonding and developing relationships and trying to figure out the puzzle pieces of basketball. Even if you lose in the heat of the battle in those moments, that still gives lessons to you about how to be selfless versus if none of it actually matters. Because if none of it actually matters, again, I give you universal basic income and every day nothing you're doing matters, watch how quickly nothing starts to matter and how dangerous and detrimental that is. You know, so, you know, it's we become soft as a country. We become soft as a people, as a species. We're just so soft.
It's weird because I would say it's like a balance that needs to happen, right? Like I feel like what has happened, at least, you know, a personal thing that I kind of came to terms with for my generation is I think that we stopped problem solving for ourselves. We expect someone else to fix it. But then a lot of times nobody's coming to save you. That's just, you know, for some instances nobody's coming to save you. So it's really weird because like you want to give, you know, in the term of team sports,
Yeah.
you want to be able to depend on your teammates, but you also need to make sure that you're self-governing and pulling
Isn't
exactly
that
what you need
weird
to do.
that balancing act?
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Because it can't, if you're all self-governing, you're
true.
selfish. You're leaving your team behind. But if you don't,
True. Well, and that's why I say, you know, one of the things I continue to say during my campaign on the political on the trail is that you can't have freedom without self-governance, but you can't have self-governance without national honor and sacred honor. So there is a point where the self-governance is regulated by your sacred honor. And so your sacred honor is going to be what creates the constraints upon which you deal with other people, right? Thomas Aquinas, very prominent Catholic theologian, once said that man can have peace when he surrenders his desires to his faith and his faith to God. Man can have peace when he surrenders his desires to his logic, his desires to his logic and his logic to God. Something like that. But anyway, it's now I got to say it because if you misquote St. Thomas Aquinas, you're just out of control. Man can have peace when he submits his desires to his reason and his reason to God. That when man submits his desires to his reason and his reason to God, then he can have peace within himself, then he can have peace amongst others. It's a very, very, very important concept. You have to be willing to submit your desires to your reason. So reason is a very, very big, and again, the whole thing we're talking about here is about logic, about first principles, about man's rational thought, about the ability to reason. And you have to submit your desires and your vices to your reason and then your reason to God. Then you can have peace. Then you can have peace with others. You can't have peace when you're in this emotional, erratic state. And I think we're creating that more and more in society. And there's no easy way back. Look, nobody wakes up tomorrow and goes, oh, the 60 to 100 years or so, or even more of psychological, you know, brainwashing that has happened, whether it was intentional or sort of, you know, inadvertently by the institutions or just the pure inertia of and direction of human society, whatever the case may be, not going to turn it around tomorrow. But you can start to make reason and logic a priority. And reason and logic just tends to be a more masculine endeavor. Tends to be a more masculine sort of intangible. And so when they say, oh, men are useless, You know, we need more women to run things. We need more equality and diversity. And it's all, sure, there are plenty of women out there who are a lot smarter than a lot of men, and I'll give them that. And if those women want to step up and play a major role, then God bless them, and we invite that. But not just on the basis of them being women, any more than to, don't vote for me because I'm black. Wouldn't want that. Vote for me because you trust that I'm going to use my logic and my reason to come to conclusions that are overall a net positive. This has been another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody. You go to TireGet.com and buy your tires. They have local installers close to you, somewhere near you, where you can get your tires installed. And if you put in promo code FPR, you'll get 3% off of your final purchase. So if you need tires, we're giving you a chance to get 3% off of your tires, which I think is good. Plus, I think our TireGet prices are probably second to none as far as you could find on the internet. So TireGet.com. Also go to freepeopleradio.com, and you can sign up for our Patreon platform, as well as find out where the podcast is being aired, all the different platforms. Go to our store and purchase some merchandise and things like that related to the podcast. That's it for me. We'll see you on Friday. Not sure who our guest is going to be yet, but we got some good ones on deck. So I think we'll get somebody who's going to be a good family and friends episode for you on Friday evening. That's it for me. Thanks for being in the studio again, Tanner. Of course. We appreciate you being here. It's a great order. Got the videos up for us, the content going. We hope you appreciate and like the reaction episodes. We're going to start putting some individual reaction clips up here in the next week or so. Probably some from this episode here. So make sure when you see those that you reshare them, where it's easier to reshare shorter form content. Thanks for being here again. Appreciate you, your viewership and listenership today and in the future. The fight continues. As always, Godspeed. Everything's up on the bar. We're all in. We get to decide. Do you want to live on your knees, or do you want to die on your feet fighting? That's the decision you get to make now.